Now, I would like to invite Dr. Silpha Daniel, Local Study Associate Director from AstraZeneca. Ma'am has completed her MBBS and MD Pharmacology from MAMC, having a strong knowledge in designing, planning, and conducting experiments. Ma'am is also highly experienced in organizing and completing tests of new drugs and ensuring their quality control and approval for their use, which has led to her a successful 5-year journey in pharma industries. Ma'am will be presenting on a topic, clinical trial operations. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure, honor. Thank you so much, Sharik sir, for he was my senior, and I'm really glad that he asked me to present this. I don't know how I will justify, but currently I heard a couple of presentations before, and I could understand that all the academicians here are here, and then we had academic presentations. So this probably I'll be talking more of how the industry perspective is. Of course, there would be questions you can probably ask later or in the chat. But I would like to give just a short description how clinical trial operations work in industry. So currently I'm in clinical trials. I have been working in medical affairs earlier. So this is a recent thing for me from the past 2 years. So coming on to what clinical trials operation is, I would just like to go on how the introduction is, what clinical trials means, how the project team is formed in the company, in the industry perspective. When we talk about different sites in different places, like when we talk about Indian setting, it's a very different scenario to conduct clinical trials here. And what are the various challenges for patient recruitment, even though we have probably the highest population we talk about, but still in all the clinical trials I have seen personally, China is the best recruiter, or Taiwan, Japan, those countries are actually ahead of us. Then probably some retention strategies for how we can actually think if somebody moves to industry, they should personally look into the factors that how can patients be retained, and what is the overview of these clinical trial processes, just a brief summary. So what are clinical trials? Now, clinical trials are the research studies that are performed to evaluate the safety and efficacy of a medical, surgical, behavioral intervention or diagnostic method. The intervention is generally compared with the current standard of treatment for the condition being studied. So I hope everyone understands that what we are getting into. So it's basically comparison, just a layman terms, what we talk about. Now, before when we go to clinical trial operation, we call it ClinOps. So clinical operations, you would have heard this term ClinOps, DevOps in various slang languages like people talk about. So clinical operation, it refers to all the activities which we are supporting the clinical trial processes from the startup to the closeout. Now, closeout can be end of study treatment as well, and till if you go into more detail in various literature, that when how the study ends or how the study has got as a primary endpoint and the study is completely closed out. So all the activities actually forms the clinical operations, and all the people who work here, the professionals, they are actually planning also. They have to implement, manage, execute the whole clinical trial process. So it's not just one thing, which each topic itself, each part itself is a huge topic to discuss. So I will just go a brief probably summary for you all to just get a idea about it. Of course, you can go into various literature and various probably websites to check what exactly are the processes in detail. So good clinical practices, if you guys, or if you people, everybody would have heard, good clinical practices is the foundation of any clinical trials. So what does this GCP mean, or good clinical practice means? It's a standard for the design, conduct, performance, monitoring, auditing, recording, analysis, and reporting of clinical trials. So all these terms itself means a lot when we are practicing this in the clinical trials in the industry. So basically, we are providing assurance that the data and reported results are credible and accurate, and the rights, integrity, and confidentiality of these trial subjects are protected. So what is the most important term which we all should understand is provides assurance. So we are giving assurance basically that all these trials which we are conducting, they are giving actually the confidentiality basis or the integrity what the data is will be arriving of all these trial subjects, it will all be protected. So this is kind of a foundation. So this rule we can see in ICH GCP. Now, ICH GCP is a huge topic, and in academics, I remember we used to get short question or a long answer question for ICH GCP. So now this is applied onto industry trials when we look into it, because we have to conduct the, so these are the various points in this slide. If you can see, these are the various points which goes on obviously in detail, but ICH GCP forms like the trial should be working in ethical basis. There should be risks which should be weighed against the anticipated benefits, but we should be able to foresee those risks. There is right and safety and well-being of patient is the top priority. There should be available information on the investigation products to support the trial. Of course, I'll go in detail the steps. The clinical trial should be scientifically sound. It should be conducted according to the protocol. Medical care and decisions are the responsibility of a qualified physician. So in a trial, obviously we have heard a principal investigator would be the person who would be uh, uh, taking care of the patient activities in individual protocols. Ensuring individuals involved in conducting the study are qualified, whether it's investigator, whether it's clinical research coordinators, study nurse, everybody who are involved, they should be qualified. Informed consent, of course, it's another topic. It's obtained freely from each patient. It should be involuntary, not like we are forcing the patient to go into the trial. All trial information is handled, recorded, and stored, allowing accurate reporting, interpretation, and verification. So this itself is like a big challenge in India. We all know that there are a lot of setups, a lot of the hospitals which do not have like a good infrastructure to record or handle or so a lot of trials do not reach to various hospitals. So this is also one issue here. When I've seen in Indian settings, confidentiality of records is protected. Investigation products, we call it IP, handled according to your good manufacturing practices. We are assuring quality of every aspect of the trial. So these are like individual points where ICH GCP uh, claims to be. Now, there is an addendum also added to it where all these principles applies to all the records referenced in this guideline, irrespective of whatever media is used. This actually probably they thought because COVID and all came and it was not just on site, it was also remote, which actually helped. So the guidelines have little been modified because of that. Aspects of these trials are essential to ensure human subject protection and reliability of trial results should be the focus of such systems. Now, this is just ICH GCP. Of course, it's more theoretical. When we apply it in our industry settings, a lot of things change. We have to look into the practical aspects as well. But we have to make sure our data integrity, everything is data privacy for the patient. The records which are there are all quality driven. So this is just a slide in which we all know what are the different phases. Of course, I don't need to tell all the academicians out here that what are the different phases. So coming when I'm talking about industry perspective, in our MNC, like more of phase 3 trials are running where where we are testing or comparing new treatment, and probably those treatments, if we have a better data, then these probably trials would get released and the molecules get approved later. So that's how more importance is given in these phase 3 trials in industry, because we are working on for the patient outcome as well, and we are making sure a better quality drug or a molecule which is probably efficient enough, safety wise, efficacy wise, it's coming into a market which would provide good benefit to the patient. Now, this is just a detail. Every clinical trial, it would be very crucial that we have a project team. So it cannot run just in single person cannot handle a clinical trial. So there are various stakeholders, internal stakeholders, external stakeholders. There would be third-party stakeholders. So when I'm talking about internal stakeholders, so if I'm working in an industry, I will have a team which would make sure a study goes from the start to the end. So there are people who are study monitors. We even call them clinical research associates, who are the site monitors. They will make sure everything which is in the site, or coordinating with the PI, is done by them. Over them are the local study managers or the project managers of that individual studies, who would make sure that the study is planned and executed well from the start to the end. And I have mentioned project manager here, but there are different names to it. It can be a therapy area lead for particular therapy area. Supposedly, we are running lung cancer or breast cancer trials. So oncology therapy area lead or a cardiovascular therapy area lead, who would probably be, the more higher level at the hierarchy. And um, uh, all of this will always have a quality manager. Obviously, we have inspections and things in academics as well. So similarly, in industry, we'll also have a audit people, a quality control manager, who would be a part of this. So these are all our internal stakeholders. And when we talk about the external stakeholders, they would be people from the hospitals or the sites which we are talking, where we are going to start the trial. So the principal investigator, sub-Is, study nurses, research coordinators are the ones who are external stakeholders. And then when we conduct these trials, there would be third party vendors which would provide systems. So those are other people which we need to handle. So it's a whole group of different stakeholders who could help each other to conduct this trial. Of course, there's challenge everywhere, but we make sure that we minimize it and try to get a quality driven data. Now, this is what I was talking. These are the steps. All steps are just brief here. So when a clinical trial, so I'll just give an example. Like supposedly, if a global clinical trial is assigned to India, so what happens is there will be a global team of the company and there will be a local team. Supposedly, I work for India. My global team would be sitting in UK, and they would be preparing the protocol. They would be making sure the study physicians from there, they make sure they design a protocol and probably send it to different countries. And of course, there would be a feasibility done in each of the country to see how this protocol would actually be beneficial, whether it would work or whether it would not work. And once those protocols are approved, when the feasibility is done, there would be a complete allocation to different countries. So supposedly India is selected for one of the oncology trials. So they would be assigned a number of sites, they would be assigned number of patients. So this is a global clinical trial coming and assigned from our superiors. But there are companies who Indian companies as well, which start the trial from there itself, that they only are the one designing the protocol. They are themselves allocating various sites in India. So both ways, the study comes to a country or a particular company, and then we assign it to different stakeholders to make sure we select the right sites, we select the right patients, we plan, and then accordingly the study starts. And to start the study itself, we need to make sure whatever feasibility we gave, supposedly we gave that we would take 40 patients for a lung cancer trial, we again cross check that whether that would be actually possible and give a final number. And then when we initiate the trial in a country, we need to plan whether we are taking how many sites, how many patients we recruit. So in between all this are the role of your DCGI, your ethics committee of various hospitals, which would help in approval of starting those trials in the country and as well as in the sites. So once a health authority gives a yes or an okay that this protocol can be started, so then those confirmations are sent to the various sites, and the sites ethic committee approves those trials. Then only the process can start. It's not that DCGI has given a yes and the hospital has not said yes and we can start the trial in the hospital. So it's like all the parties has to agree with it. Then only we start the trial in that particular site, and we make sure we conduct the study, execute it properly. And conducting study will have lot of phases of how we go and monitor each site. We make sure the patients are getting enrolled correctly. If there are any adverse events, or how do we manage? So we had a detailed talk earlier about SAE. So it will be similar, something similar to what academics as well, but in industry, SAE, serious adverse event itself, is a big topic where the DCGI ethics committee and the sponsors are the ones who are being notified immediately once an SAE happens. When we are talking about monitoring and controlling, all the site management, auditing, supply of the IP, which we are making sure for the study, are all planned and well sent to the sites. So all these activities are performed, and once the target has been achieved for that country, the trial recruitment stops, and there would be a particular year that probably the overall study would stop. And that's when your analysis, your database lock happens. These are all system based topics where all the data entry which we have entered are checked, cross-checked by the admin people, cross-checked by the local authorities, and all the reports and everything are maintained, whether it's in system, whether it's hard copies. And after all the study is completed, there is a process of archival. Company-based rules are different, but it is always better to archive the documents at particular site for at least 10 to 15 years. And this is company to company basis, and it is different. But a minimum archival should be of 15 years so that the documents are safely stored. So those are the aspects which are being seen when we start or execute and plan the whole trial. This I would not go into too much detail, but if I am a study manager and I have to start a trial, I have to make sure country-wise all the documents are well arranged. The IP has been shipped from our global team to our country. And then when we have site level documents and all the aspects, we make sure that site is ready to start the page. So there is this performing site level oversight, country level and study level. So once country gives heads up, DCGI gives heads up, we make sure the site is prepared for all the activities, and then we perform the monitoring and start the management activities. This is an ongoing process, and we have to make sure that it is the monitoring and conduct is in a sync. So obviously, a lot of stakeholders help out in these individual processes. Now, this is a term. I'll not go into too much detail. Just to know for everybody, there is this thing called RASI. RASI for each process step, who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, and who's informed. Of course, it's everywhere, but maybe the terminologies would be different. So responsible would be, supposedly I'm a study manager, I'm responsible for the study and conduct of from planning to execution. Of course, I'm accountable as well, but I can consult it with the quality managers and my senior line managers. And of course, informed is I should be informed, and also to be informed at the right time or ask people at the, so that the study wise processes don't stop. So the individual must be appropriately qualified and can fulfill multiple roles. Now, initially, when I showed you a slide where there are step-by-step processes of whether it's a site level oversight or a country level or a study level. So when I talk about, so I'll go for country, then I'll come back to site. If it is a country level oversight, a study manager has to make sure that a quality and operational data matrix, all the preparation has been done to initiate these studies. And we have to make sure how much risk we are in whenever we are starting a trial. So if we have any prevalence data, if we have any earlier trial, phase 2 trials being conducted, or any other data we have, we need to make sure that country level wise, how the risk would be there. And accordingly, we have to do the follow-up activities, preparing the document, sending it to the DCGI to make sure whether the sites which we have selected are good enough to give patients for the studies. So when we are talking about site, so we make sure the sites which have been selected, as I said, they are the right sites. Patient pool itself is good enough, and there is a score called Site Quality Risk Assessment. This is called SQRA score. So before any site is started, we make sure there is a score assigned, and we see whether it's a low score, it's a medium, high score, high score. So depending only the scores, we go to that site, because if it's a high score, the risk is too high, we won't approach that site for that particular trial. That's why we do these site SQRA probably every 6 months to make sure if a site was at risk initially and later it probably is now at a low risk. So we perform these site related activities ongoingly. And we even identify any risk and issues by seeing documents. So there is a process called not process, there is this terminology, some mnemonics we have probably kept just like how we do it in MD and well. So alquac is we make sure the source documentation is accurate, legible, all those things source documentation wise are good enough. Then only we do site level follow up activities and make sure all the parties are in sync. When we talk about study level oversight, these are more probably the industry people, if there are more, they would understand that how all the internal stakeholders would keep reviewing from the systems and probably get feedbacks from the investigators and the site people. They review the quality data at each site and make sure when other studies are given to those sites, we improve the data. So those oversights and those updations happens within the local study teams, and we inform the other vendors and other people as well on timely basis so that we make sure everything is in sync. So this is just how a study manager would probably be responsible about the ongoing trainings. We need to make sure we hand over things properly, country-wise as well, site-wise as well. We maintain the study level documents. We update the country level, site level documents on timely basis. And we also support when the data is being getting logged, data is being closed. We close everything in a timely manner. If it's a 5-year trial, follow-ups are going on. So we coordinate, of course, people change, but we need to make sure the hospitals and sites are coordinated with the ongoing people as well. Now, I'll quickly go into some of the challenges which are seen. So the challenges which are seen, probably the scientific and the operational aspects are more here in Indian settings. Um, Warning site and patient participation. Obviously, patient pool will be there, but when the patients hear that it's a clinical trial, they might probably not be interested. Regulatory issues. Supposedly, health authorities do not give an approval. We will not be able to start the study, which probably is running already in abroad, US and UK, and India is still lacking behind. Inefficient and costly. Supposedly, in a study, a budget is allocated, but it is too costly for patients to probably pay and then reimburse. So that also creates a lot of challenge here. Uh, so it is always better to simplify the operational approach. Obviously, the global people are trying to understand the challenges of developing countries and probably are keeping sample size from the representative populations. They are even taking from the Asian populations more sample size so that the India or other Asian countries get a better participation, fewer restrictions. So protocols have a lot of restrictions. In the end, even though we say we have a lot of patient pool, lot of people get screen failed, what we call in trials. So we're trying that restrictions are not many so that more patient pool can be accommodated as well. So we are short of lot of sites here, and there are only couple of sites which work probably in a good way that way. So we have to make sure we identify newer sites, newer investigators, and all the activities can be probably a little bit digitalized. I think this AI thing or digital thing would probably make a difference. Right now everything is probably handwritten. Probably we'll also come into that picture that everything is on an internet portal, payments, the documents and everything. So when I found something like how can we retain or make sure the patients are there. Uh, First of all, protocol development itself is a huge challenge. So we have to make sure the protocol development, we identify and we engage all the right stakeholders. There has to be a relevant data or relevant question to go ahead with the protocol. Uh, Obviously the complexity needs to be reduced. Of course, global trials have a lot of complex things in the protocols. So realistic eligibility criteria needs to be there so that Asian population also fit in. And of course, when we talk about the recruitment communication planning, um, we have to make sure that identifying participants who are right participants for the right treatment, and we get relevant information. And of course, we have to develop a tailored messages, customize it. So that would probably help. Of course, it is increasing the burden for the industry, but of course, that's how probably we have to make sure the planning or the recruitment is more in a good or a strategic way. Budget is a huge issue in study wise, which I have seen in different studies. So if it's a realistic budget, um, catering to all the sites, like, nationally, probably it will be a better thing to happen. What I understood also, there are Asian countries which have a single ethics committee, probably a national ethics committee, which works for all the government settings, and the approvals are like faster. So something which can be implemented, something in India as well. A lot of people are trying, so that, individual ethics committee approvals and individual approvals would probably, I mean, that would probably save time if we have a nationalized registry, nationalized approval systems. Uh, so these are some of the strategies we can probably work on, or the academic people who probably move into industry can think of something. Newer generation have a lot of ideas. We can put our brains to it and probably make sure that we have a better, you know, uh, place where clinical trials are considered really good. Like, it should not be a business. It should be, clinical trials should be for the better outcomes, realistic wise. So some of the key categories which we understood in company wise, that, how sites can be improved. We need to make sure we develop the site based infrastructure and staff. We optimize the trial and execution and conduct. We improve the site budget and contract negotiations, and we discover opportunities for conducting additional trials. Of course, all these challenges are going to be there, I don't know, of course, later, but we ourselves have to make sure that we are focused and probably go one step at a time and try to coordinate with the sites first, and then make sure the trials are executed properly. This I would just not go into too much detail. It's a very busy slide, but this is just an overview of the clinical processes which you can see. This is more of a probably one particular company. Maybe another company would figure out how study design initially, what we do. So this is from the setup to the closeout. So if you can see, study design is on the top. After study design is your statical planning and analysis, then is your medical oversight and safety notification. Then is your study and site operations, where all these things of conducting site management, monitoring are aspects. Then is your data collection. We make sure all the data is quality driven. And obviously, in the end, when trial is almost going to end, we need to make sure that the results and data wise, patient engagement is there. And in the end, all these things are made sure that the management of all these documents, the training part, everything is there, and everybody's at having an oversight, be it the sponsors, be it the principal investigators, and even regulatory authorities as well. So there is a timeline for each and every processes which you are just seeing on this slide. So I will just stop talking, and I would want, probably, if anybody has any comments or anything you would like to ask industry wise, I would be happy to answer. And thank you so much again, the organizers, for having me here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was a crisp and clear presentation. And ma'am, we have a question from a delegate. Uh, how we can prepare ourselves for a future to work as a better principal investigator, as most of us are PG students. Over to you,
Uh,
ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks, Manish. I think. Thank you so much, Manish, for asking that question. And I think that's a good start from you, what you're asking. So what I would feel, probably you should find your focus, what exactly you would want to do. If you are thinking you want to be a better principal investigator, so it depends. Like, industry-driven trials are more for probably who are clinicians. Like, I work in oncology trials, so medical oncologists are the principal investigators. So if you're an MD pharmacology, of course, there are other trials in industry or other academic trials as well. So one has to start from themselves, that whatever data we are providing or whatever patients we are enrolling, we need to make sure they are the right patients and they are getting the right treatment, because in the end this is the data which is going to probably go and probably come into a paper, and probably a molecule will get approved. So if even though it's a earlier part of earlier phase studies, still we need to make sure the data which is there, it's relevant and it is quality driven. So that's why the quality aspect and even affects the efficacy of the molecule, or quality affects the data which is coming. So improving patient outcomes should not be just saying about it. We should not just say about the fact that we have to improve patient outcomes, but we need to make sure we have to be in their shoes as well, that they are actually getting into the trial to make us understand that we can find something better for them. So I think we just focus from ourselves and start from the basics. That's how it's just a start. So you can just start right now to focus things.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for your time and thoughtful presentation.